My name is Daniel Rourke, age 51, employee ID 883742, under the Department of Sanitation, Division 5, Northern Virginia Sector. That's the official designation, at least. Most people think sanitation means garbage trucks and landfills. The truth is, we don't touch any of that. We handle what they call standard biological and material disposal. What that means depends on who's asking and who's listening. I've worked here 23 years. I started in 2002, right after a downsizing at the Fairfax County Waste Management Center. A recruiter approached me, middle-aged man, calm voice, said he was from Washington. The way he said, it made me understand he didn't mean the city. He said they were looking for experienced logistical personnel familiar with environmental containment, clearance, and hazardous removal. Benefits were good. Security clearance required. No public contact. Sounded like a step up from the trash roads. My wife, Lydia, was pregnant with our second kid then. I needed stability. I signed everything they put in front of me without reading more than the salary line. That was my first mistake, though I wouldn't understand it for nearly 2 decades. My first assignment was at the Quantico Transfer Facility, which, officially, doesn't exist. It's marked on old maps as an abandoned waste site, fenced with barbed wire and dotted with cameras that blink in patterns you learn not to stare at. The place smells of diesel, wet concrete, and something sharp, like iron in the air. My supervisor, a man named Harlan Bex, was the one who broke down the real work for me on day 1. "We don't clean garbage," he said. "We clean incidents." He handed me a laminated code chart, colors, levels, and zones. No words, just initials and timestamps. Green meant standard biologicals, animal carcasses, decomposed material, expired lab matter. Yellow was chemical or industrial residue. Orange meant mixed contamination, containment breach. Usually, red was rare, and I didn't see it until my 6th year. There was also black. Harlan never explained black. He only said, "If you see a black tag, don't look, just seal." For years, my life was quiet, predictable in its own bleak rhythm. I'd report to Quantico at L500, suit up, review the manifest, drive out in one of the department's nondescript trucks. Each was equipped with an internal lock system. Once closed, it couldn't be reopened without dual clearance codes. The trucks bore no logos, just small serial numbers that changed weekly. The locations varied. Some were federal sites, some private labs, some open stretches of woodland under temporary federal jurisdiction. Sometimes we'd get called to rural parts of Loudoun County, or an old tunnel near D.C., metro maintenance lines. We'd roll in after dark, take samples, photograph the scene wrap, and seal. Everything had to look untouched by dawn. The first few years, I didn't question it. We all told ourselves the same story. We were the cleanup crew for government experiments, chemical spills, bio-waste accidents. That made it sound noble, necessary. We were the people who made sure the public slept easy. But around 2011, the tone of our dispatches changed. We started getting fewer written manifests and more verbal briefings. The code sheets came sealed with new categories. No longer colors, but phrases. Cold sites, delayed response, organic unconfirmed. I remember asking Harlan what that meant. He just said, "Keep your gloves tight and don't think too much. Thinking slows you down." My first cold site was in Prince William Forest Park, early March. Snow still on the ground. pale morning light cutting through the trees. The report said an animal disturbance near a creek bed. When we arrived, there were already local authorities there, but not in uniform. Plainclothes, dark vehicles. They waved us through without speaking. The ground was torn up like a small explosion had gone off. Trees bent backward, roots exposed. At the center was what looked like a burned patch of soil, still steaming. There was no smell of gasoline or accelerant, but something was giving off heat. We started standard procedure. Photograph, core sample, containment sweep. When I drove the coring tube into the soil, it hit something soft. I thought maybe animal remains, so I widened the hole. Inside was flesh. Not decomposing, not raw, but smooth and gray, like skin that had been boiled and hardened. No bones. Just a stretch of material that pulsed faintly when exposed to air. Bex ordered me to stop, bag the sample, seal the pit. I followed, but the movement caught my eye. The pulse seemed to sync with my heartbeat. Each time my pulse quickened, it quickened too. Back at the truck, we sealed everything in containment bins and logged the manifest as organic residue, classification unverified. When I asked where it was going, Bex said, drop point 4. That was a landfill out near Fort Belvoir, though the trucks never actually entered through the main gates. We used an access road that ended at a set of hydraulic doors built into a hillside. When you offload there, you don't see anyone. You drive into a long tunnel, stop at a red line, key in your code. The doors ahead open just enough for your truck to enter. A green light flashes, eventing his follows, and when you exit, the truck's back compartment is empty, completely, even if you had cargo bolted to the floor. No one ever explained what happens inside. You learn not to ask. Still, the job gave me routine, and routine numbs suspicion. My kids grew up. Lydia stopped asking why I came home smelling like ammonia and iron. The pay raises came on time. My badge stayed valid. For a while, that was enough. Then, 3 years ago, something shifted again. The Quantico site expanded. New personnel arrived. Men in gray coveralls with no ID patches, younger, quieter. They didn't eat in the cafeteria, didn't park in the lot. Their trucks were black instead of white. One night, I stayed late to finish reports and saw 2 of them carrying something through the corridor. Something wrapped in plastic sheeting that dripped onto the concrete. It was about the size of a person. Next morning, that hallway was sealed off with a ventilation, maintenance sign. Over the following months, our call volume increased. But the incident descriptions stopped making sense. One dispatch said, sound contamination. Another said, movement without source. I told myself they were typos. Bureaucracy is a swamp of errors. But deep down, I started dreading the 3 a.m. calls. The worst came last spring, codenamed Red Wash. The order came directly from above Bex, which almost never happened. 3 of us were assigned me, Bex, and a tech named Harper. The coordinates led to an undeveloped property south of Manassas, marked as Environmental Survey Area, Fort 2B. When we arrived, there were already lights, temporary towers casting white glare over an old barn and a wide pit behind it. A team in hazmat suits was standing in a circle around the pit, silent. When we approached, one of them handed Bex a clipboard. He glanced at it, frowned, and gestured for me to stay back. Harper ignored him and walked closer to the pit. I shouldn't have followed, but I did. Inside that pit was water, or something like it. Black, still glassy. But the reflection didn't match the surface. It showed movement, ripples that didn't exist above ground. When I leaned closer, the reflection shifted. It showed my face, yes, but not my expression. My reflection was looking up at me, eyes wide like it was the one peering into my world. I stumbled back. The air around the pit felt cold, dense. Harper said something like, "Jesus, it's moving." Then there was a sound, low and wet, like suction pulling against the earth. The next second, the reflection rippled, and something splashed up, fast. I didn't see what hit Harper, only that he screamed once and went silent. When the surface stilled, there was no trace of him. Just his glove floating. The hazmat men moved instantly. Two pulled Bex back. Others started unrolling a flexible barrier over the pit. No shouting, no panic, just methodical containment. I remember one of them saying, "Shield before exposure threshold." By dawn, the entire pit was gone. The field looked freshly tilled, as if nothing had been there. We were told to log the event as chemical sinkhole contamination, isolated. Harper's name was erased from the duty roster before we returned to base. That night, I sat in my truck outside the facility until sunrise. I couldn't bring myself to go home. I've kept my mouth shut about most of it, about Harper, about the reflection, about what we really transport in those trucks. But silence eats you slowly. I've started noticing things, small at first. The static hum that follows me, even when the room's quiet. The way puddles sometimes ripple, near my boots though the air's still. The feeling that I'm being watched when I clean my equipment. Last week, I got a notice in my inbox. Mandatory re-evaluation of operational integrity. It's a formality, supposedly, a background refresh. But a colleague told me that's what they send before reassignment. No one knows what reassignment means. Harlan hasn't been in for days. His locker's been emptied. I've thought about quitting, but you don't quit this department. You just get transferred. I'll write more soon. For now, I need to document everything before they change my clearance access or wipe the logs. And if anyone finds this record, understand this much. The Department of Sanitation doesn't clean up trash. We clean up evidence. And lately I'm starting to think we've been cleaning up us. I didn't sleep that night after the reassignment notice. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pit again. The black water, Harper's glove, the way it rippled even when no wind blew. The hum in my ears wouldn't stop either. It wasn't tinnitus. I've had that before. This had rhythm, almost like breathing. By morning, I convinced myself I was just rattled. I shaved, pressed my uniform, and drove to Quantico facility as usual. The highway was nearly empty, fog hanging low over the Potomac. The guard at the main checkpoint didn't even look up when I flashed my ID. Just waved me through with that same flat motion they all learn. I passed the outer fence, the secondary gate, and then pulled into the main lot. Something felt off before I even parked. Half the vehicles were gone. The lot usually filled before LU 600, but today there were maybe a dozen trucks, most of them the new black models. The white ones like mine looked old and out of place, relics from a division that quietly stopped existing. When I entered the main building, the air felt wrong, sterile, dry over, filtered. The reception desk was empty. Normally, there's a clerk named Rhonda who hands out manifests and makes bitter jokes about coffee. Her chair was still there, but her computer screen was dark, cord neatly coiled beside it. Down the hall, the fluorescence flickered in a slow pulse that matched the hum in my head. Bex's office was locked. That never happened before. He left his door open even when he wasn't there. A small detail, but details build patterns, and patterns tell the truth. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again, harder. That's when I noticed the tape. A strip of gray adhesive, cleanly cut, sealing the edge of the door where the lock met the frame. It had a government tag over it. The letters read, Pindindrek Ra Sefatone. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I went to the briefing room. Usually, there'd be 20 of us gathered there by sunrise. That day, 5. 2 faces I didn't recognize. Gray coveralls, no badges. The others were old hands like me, Price, who'd been here 10 years, and a tech named Dylan, who barely spoke unless spoken to. A man I'd never seen before walked in tall, severe face, clean, shaven, crisp uniform with no visible insignia. He carried a small black folder and didn't bother introducing himself. You are here because Division 5 has been consolidated, he said. Effective immediately. Your assignments and supervisors have changed. All previous clearance levels are revoked. You will undergo evaluation today and redeployment tomorrow. Questions will not be entertained. His voice had no accent, no hesitation, just words like stamped metal. He handed each of us a paper envelope with our name written in block letters. Mine read Rourke, Daniel, Tempo, our Aldi. He dismissed us after that, just turned and left. Price cursed under his breath, crumpling his envelope. Dylan kept staring at his unmoving. I opened mine carefully. Inside was a single page. It said report to sub, level 3, wing CO 900 hours. Escort required. Bring ID, logbook, and clearance card. Do not bring personal effects. No signature. Sub, level 3 wasn't on the standard facility map. The elevators only went down to 2. I'd seen the locked door once. Metal, unmarked, beside the freight shaft. I'd assumed it led to storage. When I asked Dylan if he knew where Wing C was, he didn't answer right away. He just said, that's where they take the red tags. Then he left. I didn't know what that meant until later. At 0850, I stood by the freight elevator. A guard arrived, another unfamiliar face, silent behind a mirrored visor. He scanned my badge, compared it to a list on a small tablet, then pressed a recessed button I'd never noticed before. The elevator doors opened, revealing a narrow shaft lined with matte steel. No floor buttons, just a key slot. He inserted a key, turned it, and the elevator descended. No hum of machinery, just a slow, smooth drop like being lowered on a string. When the doors opened, the air hit me first. Cold, chemical, with that same iron edge. The walls down there weren't concrete, but polished metal, reflective enough to see yourself in. My reflection looked pale, distorted by the slight curvature. The hallway ended at a heavy door with a small window. Beyond it, I saw light, movement. The guard keyed me through. Inside was a room the size of a warehouse, filled with rows of sealed containers. Each one the size of a shipping crate, painted gray with black markings. Some were labeled BIOLOGICAL, some CHICHIMICEL, and some had no labels at all. Cables ran from the ceiling into the tops of the containers, feeding into small control panels that blinked with slow green lights. A woman in a white coat approached, clipboard in hand. Her badge identified her only as Dr. Morin. She smiled like she was trying to remember how. Mr. Rourke, she said. You're being reassigned to interim containment operations. You've handled transport before. Correct. I nodded. She gestured to a nearby crate. Then this should be familiar. The difference is, you won't be moving these. You'll be monitoring them. She led me to a workstation. A small metal desk with a black terminal. The screen displayed a list of numerical codes, each tagged with a location and a timer. These are your active units, she said. If any timer hits 0, you log the event, press the confirm key, and wait for a response code. Do not approach the containers unless instructed. What's inside them? I asked. Her smile didn't change. Material in transit. I watched the timers. Some were set for hours, others for days. Each second that passed, I heard the faintest vibration from the crates, almost like breathing again. After a few hours, I started to notice something stranger. My name wasn't just on the terminal. It appeared next to one of the unit codes, RO4D. The R could have stood for anything, but the sequence felt deliberate. I scrolled through the others. None of the other monitors had that pattern. When I tried to ask Dr. Morin, she was gone. So were the other personnel. The entire floor seemed deserted. That's when I heard the sound. Not loud, just a faint tapping, like someone drumming their fingers inside one of the crates. I turned. Row after row stood silent, except for that one, Unit 9. Its light had shifted from green to yellow. The terminal beeped. Unai, come ti nal zufam. Y and I hesitated, then pressed Y. The timer froze. The crate stopped vibrating. The hum in my ears grew louder. Then a second message appeared. O Pareto, Cophriarn D. I detated. A camera lens, barely visible, rotated from the ceiling and fixed on me. I wasn't supposed to be on camera. These areas were never recorded, at least officially. I took a step back, suddenly aware of my own breathing. The terminal flickered once, twice, then displayed a single new line of text. Takyoyu, Dino. I swear to God, I didn't imagine it. The guard appeared a moment later, as if nothing had happened. End of shift, he said. Leave your badge. I tried to protest, but he repeated it. Leave your badge. I placed it on the desk. The magnetic strip side up. He nodded and escorted me back to the elevator. When I got outside, it was already dark. I'd gone in before 9 and come out after sunset, though the clocks in the facility still read 14:02. At home, Lydia said I looked gray. My hand shook when I tried to eat. That night, I dreamed of the containers opening, not exploding, just breathing in unison, like a field of lungs. The next morning, I found a new envelope taped to my door. No postage, no markings, just my name. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, grainy, showing me standing in that sub-level room. But in the photo, there was someone behind me. Not the guard, not Dr. Morin. Someone who looked exactly like me, wearing the same uniform, the same gloves. Only he wasn't moving. His eyes were open, staring at the back of my head. I burned the photo in the sink. The smell was the same iron tang I've been tasting for weeks. That day, I tried calling Price, but his line went straight to a disconnected tone. Dylan's number rang once, and then switched to a recording. The number you have reached is no longer in service. At 3 p.m., I received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was soft, calm, measured. Mr. Rourke, it said. We've reviewed your integrity evaluation. You've been cleared for continued service. I started to ask what that meant, but the line clicked dead. I checked my inbox later. The reassignment file was gone. No record of sub level 3. Even my clock and log for the day had been erased. Still, the hum remains. Stronger now. It follows the rhythm of my heartbeat, then slips out of sync just enough to make me notice. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel like I'm standing in front of one of those containers again. Only this time, it's not sealed, and something on the other side of the steel is breathing with me. Woke before dawn, not from an alarm, the kind that feels heavy enough to press on your ribs. For a few seconds I didn't remember where I was. Then the house came into focus, Lydia asleep, the pale light leaking through blinds, the hum still pulsing in my head like a distant engine idling underground. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. The nails had a faint gray tint, not dirt, more like residue. When I rubbed them against each other, the smell rose. Metallic, faintly sweet. I washed them 3 times and still couldn't get it off. The reassignment call from yesterday had come from an unlisted number. I tried redialing, but the line was dead. When I checked my email again, every message older than 24 hours was gone. The inbox looked scrubbed clean. Even the folder labels had changed. One was New Integrity Archives active. Inside, one file. It contained a transcript of my own voice. Mr. Rourke has complied. No contamination confirmed. Recommend continued observation. The timestamp was from that morning, Zo 4:12. I hadn't recorded anything. I printed it anyway, folded the sheet, and tucked it into the pocket of my uniform. I needed something tangible, something real. At 06th I Hoded, I drove back to Quantico facility. The fog was thicker today, swallowing the outline of the perimeter fence until it looked like it was floating. The guard at the checkpoint was a new face again. Same mirrored visor, same precise hand motion. Rourke Daniel. Division 5. He checked a list. Division 5 is closed. I have clearance under reassignment protocol. He stared for a beat too long, then tapped his earpiece. Hold. A minute later, the gate light turned green. He waved me through. Inside, the main building looked repainted. That's not something you notice often, but the gray had changed shade, lighter, too clean. The old scuff marks near the stairwell were gone. Even the directory plaque had new fonts. It was as if the place had shed its skin overnight. Down the corridor, I saw Dylan. At least, I thought it was him. He was wearing a plain uniform with no patch, carrying a clipboard. When I called his name, he turned slowly. His face looked right, but his eyes didn't. There was no recognition, no irritation. Nothing, I said. It's me. Rourke. He blinked once. You're not cleared for contact. Then he walked away, steps measured, like he was following an invisible line. I stood there, frozen, until a voice from behind startled me. Mr. Rourke, you're early. Dr. Morin. White coat, clipboard again, same distant politeness. She led me down a different corridor, this time narrower, colder. The floors weren't tile anymore, but smooth resin, light reflecting off them like water. We're moving the observation stations, she said. Level 3 is undergoing calibration. You'll be monitoring from here for now. The room she led me into was smaller than before. 4 terminals, a single camera in the corner, and a window looking into another chamber. The chamber was empty except for a metal table and what looked like a sealed drain in the floor. Morin handed me a small headset. These will allow direct auditory monitoring. What exactly am I listening for? She smiled that same tired smile. Irregularities. Then she left. The hum in my ears faded the moment I put the headset on. For the first time in days, there was silence. Clean, blank silence. Then faintly, a sound began to build. Not through the room, but through the headset itself. A low resonance, like wind traveling through pipes. The terminal screen came alive. Unit listings again. This time there were 3 S09, S11, and RZO412D. My code. The timer beside it blinked erratically, not counting down, not up, just flickering. Every few seconds, the sound in the headset changed pitch. High, then low. Then something almost like a whisper layered beneath. I increased the volume slightly and thought I heard a pattern. Wordlets. Maybe English. Short bursts followed by silence, repeated in intervals that felt deliberate. I started writing them down. 3 short, 1 long. Pause. 2 short, 2 long. Pause. After 15 minutes, I realized it wasn't random. It was time breathing. The reflection from that pit flashed through my mind. My own face, moving when I didn't. I pulled off the headset, heart pounding. The hum in my skull returned instantly, louder now, like it had been waiting. I stood and looked through the observation window. The chamber on the other side wasn't empty anymore. There was a shape, human-sized, barely visible through the frost, that had formed on the glass. It stood motionless in the center of the room, arms at its sides. I couldn't see its face. My first instinct was to log the anomaly, but when I turned back to the terminal, the list had changed. Only 1 unit now, R400D. A siege my code. A message blinked across the screen. Operato arpasin CFI armed. BOFDBACK raw DMG pagarases. The room lights dimmed. My reflection appeared on the glass, overlapping the shape behind it, until I couldn't tell where one ended. I felt pressure in my ears, like the air itself had thickened. Then everything went black. When I woke, I was sitting at the terminal. The clock read 18:42. My hands were trembling, but there was no memory of what happened. I checked the window. Empty again. The frost was gone. Doctor. Morin entered, calm as ever. How are you feeling? What was that? I asked. Calibration test. I blacked out. She tilted her head. You requested sedation. It's in your log. I didn't. She handed me a tablet. The screen showed a video recording. Me, sitting at the desk, saying, administering light sedative for extended session. My voice, my tone, my movements. Except I had no memory of it. Morin smiled. You'll adjust. The interface sometimes creates feedback between operator and subject. Subject. Her eyes flipped to the window. It's important you maintain consistency. The system responds to recognition. What system? She paused, as if deciding whether to tell me the truth or the approved version of it. Containment is reciprocal, Mr. Rourke. Observation keeps the material stable. If no one watches, it destabilizes. And if it recognizes the observer. She didn't answer. She only said, report at 0600. Don't be late again. I didn't remember being late. When I left, the hallways seemed longer than before. I counted 12 turns to reach the elevator, though it had always been 3. The air carried that faint metallic taste again. Outside, the fog hadn't lifted. The lot was full this time. Black trucks, lined perfectly, engines idling with no drivers inside. Their headlights flicked on and off in slow unison. At home, Lydia wasn't there. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The house felt rearranged. Photos missing from the walls, drawers reorganized. On the kitchen counter, a sealed envelope sat beside the sink. No name, no markings. Inside was another photo. Same table. Only this time, I was on it. My eyes were open. Tubes ran from my arms into a console beside the table. Behind me stood Dr. Morin, clipboard in hand, looking at the camera. There was writing on the back of the photo. Integrity holds when self is observed. I tore it in half and threw it in the trash. That night, I didn't sleep. The hum synchronized with the ticking of the kitchen clock, then overtook it. Around 3 a.m., the phone rang once, then stopped. A text followed rituarin. At 5:45, I gave up pretending to rest. The mirror over the sink fogged even though I hadn't run the water. When I wiped it clear, my reflection lagged. Second delay before it caught up. At the facility, the main doors didn't require my badge anymore. They opened automatically as I approached. The corridors were darker, the hum deeper. I found my way back to the observation room without escort. The headset was already waiting for me. The terminal was on. One message, Belisas Riz Isumes. Spijtfcral Forawihalvdi. Steady US. SYNC in a tine. I hesitated, then put the headset on. The sound came immediately. Steady breathing, close matching mine. Then a voice, quiet, distorted, but unmistakably familiar. Daniel. It was my voice. I froze. You're doing well, it said. Just stay with me. The hum filled every corner of my skull, vibrating against my teeth. My hands moved on their own, typing into the terminal. I wasn't controlling them. Kofram, Kotinyupen. And my fingers pressed Y. The voice exhaled. Good. The lights flickered once. The reflection in the glass leaned forward. Only I hadn't moved. It smiled faintly, as if relieved. Then the screen cleared, leaving a single line. Biof edback kmp Opiratok object len k establish. The terminal went dark. When I removed the headset, the room was empty again. The camera in the corner swiveled once and clicked off. Dr. Morin entered minutes later. Her voice was softer now, almost kind. Congratulations, Mr. Roque. You're stable? For what? For transfer. She placed a new badge on the desk. It was black, with my name etched in silver. Underneath, a single word, Supar Visar. I stared at it, trying to feel something. Pride, fear, confusion. Nothing came. Only that quiet hum, pulsing like a second heartbeat. As she turned to leave, she said, "It helps if you stop thinking of yourself as separate. Observation goes both ways." I looked once more through the window. For the briefest moment, I saw movement again. A figure stepping away into the dark. It looked exactly like me, wearing the same badge. Then the lights went out. I didn't go home that night. They didn't tell me to stay, but it was clear I wasn't expected anywhere else. The badge felt it heavy in my pocket, like it carried weight beyond the metal. Supervisor. The word didn't fit. I walked the corridors alone. The lights had dimmed to a low amber, and the hum seemed to come from the walls themselves. Occasionally, a door would open with a slow pneumatic sigh, and I'd glimpse things. Equipment sealed under plastic. Men in gray coats moving like ghosts. At 0200, a voice crackled over the intercom. Supervisor Rourke, report to intake 2. The hall to intake was longer than I remembered. Each step echoed against the floor in soft metallic taps. When I reached the end, I saw 2 security officers standing beside a steel door marked with black tape. Both had their visors down. One of them scanned my badge. The door unlocked with a low tone. Inside was a staging room. Bright, sterile, too cold. A single gurney stood at the center. On it lay a person covered with a white sheet. A clipboard hung at the foot. Sub jet4tb post kante nmtxam. Procedure orientation, one of the guards said. You'll oversee the audit. He handed me a tablet. It displayed a checklist of items. Identity confirmation, integrity log, material tagging, disposition. The kind of form I'd filled out 1,000 times, except this time, the subject was human. I looked at the sheet again. There was movement under it. Small, slow breathing. She's alive, I asked. For now? The guard's tone made it sound routine. He pressed a button on the wall. A low hum filled the room, deeper than the one in my head. The lights shifted from white to pale blue. The woman on the gurney stirred. Her face was pale, veins faintly dark beneath the skin. When her eyes opened, they didn't look at me. They looked through me, as if her gaze was searching for something behind my eyes. What happened to her? The guard didn't answer. He only said, "Document stability." I stepped closer, holding the tablet like a shield. Her pupils dilated and constricted in strange rhythm. When she spoke, it was barely audible. "Please, close it." Her lips trembled, and for a second, I thought she meant her eyes. Then she lifted her hand slightly, fingers twitching toward the air above her chest. "Close it," she whispered again. The window. There was no window in the room. Her monitor beeped once, flatlined. The guards moved immediately. No panic, no CPR attempt. One detached a cable from the console and reattached it to the port in the wall. The line steadied. The body didn't move. One guard glanced at me. "Proceed with disposition." I scrolled through the form, hands shaking. Under disposition, there were only two options, archive or rearren. What's the difference? Archive means retention. Return means reallocation. Reallocation to what? He didn't answer. I tapped archive. The tablet emitted a tone. The guard nodded, pressed another button. The gurney's base retracted into the floor like an elevator, vanishing with a hiss. When the panel sealed, the guard turned to me. "You'll acclimate." He handed me a new folder. Supervisor Orientation, Phase 2. Inside were access codes for the lower levels and a map I'd never seen before. Below Level 3 were at least 4 more floors. Each was labeled with a single word: assimilation, reprocessing, core. I stared at those words long after the guards left. None of them appeared in any department manual I'd ever seen. At dawn, I rode the elevator down. My badge unlocked each floor with a single green flash. The air grew colder the deeper I went. Level 4 assimilation. The corridor was lined with transparent panels. Behind each, figures sat motionless in reclined chairs, faces obscured by breathing masks. Tubes ran from their arms into wall-mounted consoles that pulsed with blue light. Every so often, one of the figures would twitch, and the light would flare brighter for a moment before dimming again. A technician saw me and saluted awkwardly. "Morning, Supervisor. Integrity readings are stable." "What's the material?" I asked. He hesitated. "Residual operators. Post-link personnel." I frowned. "You mean employees?" "Previous supervisors," he said, then quickly turned back to his console. "They retain coherence longer that way." I didn't ask what he meant by coherence. Further down, another door required a biometric scan. The display read Rourke. Daniel, clearance confirmed. Inside was a smaller chamber with 3 pods arranged in a circle. Transparent lids, condensation inside. Each pod contained what looked like a body, but translucent, almost luminous, as if made from the air itself. I leaned closer to the nearest one and saw faint features: eyes, mouth, my own nose. The nameplate at the base read RZO412D, the same code from my terminal. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The pod's surface flickered, and for a moment the figure's eyes opened. Not fully, just enough to catch the light. They were my eyes. A voice came through the intercom. "Supervisor Rourke, please report to reprocessing." I couldn't speak. The voice repeated the instruction, calm, patient, unquestionable. When I finally stepped into the next elevator, I realized my hands were trembling. The black badge felt hot against my chest. Level 5 reprocessing. It wasn't a floor so much as a hangar. Rows of containers, larger than the ones I'd seen before, lined both sides. Each bore a serial code. Each emitted a faint vibration. A man in a gray coat approached. Older, sharp, featured, with a faint scar across his cheek. "Supervisor Rourke," he said. "We..." Introduced himself as Director Hayes, head of material conversion. His handshake was dry and precise. "You've done excellent work," he said. "Few last this long without understanding their purpose." I followed him through the hangar, past containment units that looked almost alive, bulging slightly as if something inside shifted when we passed. "What purpose?" I asked. "Continuity," Hayes said simply. "The department's true function isn't sanitation. It's preservation. We prevent systemic decay, of matter, of identity, of narrative. Entropy doesn't clean itself." He stopped at a large observation window. Behind it was a chamber similar to the one I'd seen before. But this time there were dozens of figures suspended in clear fluid, floating like specimens. Each wore a tag at the base of their spine, small metallic, engraved with a letter and number. One of them drifted close to the glass. The tag read RZO412D. My throat went dry. "That's my code." It was. Now it's material. The links stabilized during Phase 1. What you see are fragments, iterations necessary to maintain containment balance. "I don't understand." He looked almost sympathetic. "You were selected for integration because of your record. Consistent, reliable, minimal deviation. The system requires structure, and men like you provide it. Every operation leaves residue, thought, memory, pattern. We reprocess those patterns into usable containment matrices." He gestured to the suspended forms. Each of these was once an operator. "They don't die, exactly. They're redistributed." I took a step back, shaking my head. "That's not possible." He smiled faintly. "You've seen the evidence. You've signed the manifests. You felt the hum." The hum, louder now, seemed to pulse through the walls like a heartbeat. Hayes handed me a small recording device. "You'll continue oversight from here. Documentation ensures stability. Observation is containment." He left me standing there. For hours, I watched the chamber. The figures barely moved, but sometimes their eyes would flick open. Never in unison, just one or two at a time, as if testing consciousness. One of them floated closer to the glass, and for an instant, I thought I saw my own reflection staring back. Not in the surface, but from inside. That was when the console beside me beeped. Unity 0412DSYNCH round ICQIVA AWA NCEDC Teddy Inapshikara key NYFN. My finger hovered over the key. I didn't know what correction meant, but part of me already did. The hum rose. The lights flickered. I pressed Y. A mechanical sound followed. A pump, engaging, fluid swirling inside the chamber. The figure that looked like me twitched, mouth opening in a silent scream. The others responded, ripples spreading through the tank. The display flashed ver INCE, Nenen E LRT, Rastu Ard. When the lights steadied, everything was still again. I turned away, heart pounding, stomach hollow. The hum subsided to a low vibration in my bones. At the end of the hall, another door waited, black, unmarked. My badge unlocked it automatically. Beyond it was darkness. I heard footsteps before I saw her. Dr. Morin emerged from the shadows, clipboard in hand. Her expression hadn't changed. Calm, almost gentle. "You performed well," she said. "Stability metrics are within acceptable range." "What did I just do?" "You maintained continuity." I shook my head. Those were people. They were constructs. Versions. Without operators, they collapse. Without collapse, the system overflows. It's cyclical. Why me? She tilted her head, studying me the way a scientist studies a specimen. You follow procedure even when you don't believe it. That's rare. She stepped closer. There's one more level. You're authorized now. The core. She nodded. Observation complete. Integration pending. Her words lingered like statigration. Pending. I followed her down another corridor. The air grew thicker, warmer. The hum became a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate inside my chest. At the corridor's end stood a single door, wider than any I'd seen. No handle, just a panel that scanned my face. The screen flashed green. A CSS, Geometrie, Roark, Dienel. Morin looked at me one last time. Once inside, do not look away. The door slid open. A wave of heat and light hit me. The room beyond wasn't a chamber. It was an expanse, circular, walls lined with pulsing conduits that disappeared into a vast, breathing structure at the center. The thing looked organic, alive. Veins of metal, flesh, and cable intertwined. It pulsed in rhythm with the hum. In its surface, hundreds of faces shifted and faded. Some were strangers. Some were mine. I took one step forward, and the floor responded. Soft beneath my boots, like muscle. Morin's voice echoed from behind. This is where everything we clean ends up. Matter without meaning. Meaning without matter. The light intensified. The hum aligned perfectly with my heartbeat. "Supervisor," she said softly. "It's time to return." The structure opened, like an eye dilating. And in the reflection of that living metal, I saw myself, only older, calmer, already waiting inside. When I opened my eyes, there was daylight. Not the amber glow of sub-level lights, but real sunlight. The kind that filters through leaves and blinds you for a second. I was lying on my back in a field I didn't recognize. Grass damp beneath me, the smell of soil and rain thick in the air. For a few seconds I couldn't remember my name. Then it came back in pieces. Daniel Rourke. Supervisor, Department of Sanitation. I sat up slowly. My uniform was clean, pressed, badge gone. A 2-lane road ran about 50 yards away, and beyond it, a stretch of trees. It looked like early morning somewhere in Virginia, maybe near Stafford County. Birds were calling. A car passed, slow, the driver not even glancing my way. For a moment, I thought maybe the last few days had been a breakdown. Maybe none of it. Harper, Morin, the Corpin. Maybe I'd been hospitalized and discharged. Maybe I dreamed everything. But then I saw the pattern in the grass where I'd been lying, a faint circular impression. About 6 feet wide, scorched slightly at the edges, as though I'd been lowered there by something hot. And when I reached for my phone, I realized it wasn't my phone. The model was older, heavy, cracked along the corner. When I powered it on, the date read April 12, 2012. 13 years earlier. I blinked, tried again. The date wouldn't change. No signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing. Just that same pulsing hum, faint and low, coming from the speaker even though the volume was off. I stood up, dizzy. My memory was a mess. Faces half formed, time scrambled. I could remember my kids' names, but not how old they were. I could remember Lydia's laugh, but not the last time I heard it. There was a sign near the road. Kures refi on. Restrecid ACCES. I started walking toward it. Every step felt both too light and too heavy, like gravity was undecided. The closer I got, the more the world seemed to stutter. Cars on the highway passed in uneven rhythm. Long pauses, then sudden blurs of speed. A bird froze mid-flight for half a second before continuing. The checkpoint gate was unmanned. The booth sat empty, door ajar. Inside, a small radio was on, whispering white noise with occasional fragments of voices. Unit R4, 1, 2 integrity stable. My number. I backed away from the booth, pulse quickening. The facility itself, at least what I could see from the ridge, looked different. Newer. Smaller. The old fences were gone, replaced by clean perimeter lines, and a single main building painted bright white. Civilian vehicles were parked outside. Delivery vans, government set-ins. Nothing like the endless fleet of black trucks I remembered. I walked closer, half expecting alarms, but no one stopped me. The main door opened automatically. Inside, a receptionist sat at a modern desk, smiling like this was an insurance office. "Good morning," she said. "Do you have an appointment?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. "Sir, Daniel Rourke," I managed. "Division 5. She frowned. "Division 5. She tapped at her keyboard. "I'm sorry, sir. There's no Division 5. "Are you sure you're at the right building?" I looked at the wall behind her. Framed photographs of clean-up crews, shiny trucks, smiling employees holding community awards. Department of Sanitation, Fairfax Regional Office. Not the same place. I forced a smile. Must have mixed up the address. She nodded politely. "It happens." I walked out, heart pounding. The air outside felt thin, unreal. My hands looked too pale. When I pressed my thumb against my wrist, the pulse stuttered, 3 beats, then silence, then 2 more. I needed to find someone. Anyone who knew me. I drove. Don't remember where I got the car. Maybe it was parked near the field. Maybe it was waiting for me. But I ended up outside my old neighborhood, near Fredericksburg. The houses looked the same, but the colors were wrong. Brighter somehow, like someone had increased the saturation on reality. When I pulled into my old driveway, there was a different car there. The blinds in the window moved, and a woman stepped out. Not Lydia. She looked younger, early 30s, carrying a laundry basket. When she saw me, her expression froze. "Can I help you?" she asked. I looked at the house number, same as mine had been. "I used to live here," I said, "with my wife and kids." Her eyes softened a little. We've been here 10 years. Bought it from a woman named Lydia Rourke. Lovely lady. Said her husband passed away. The words hit like static in my chest. When? About 3 years ago, I think. She must have seen the color drain from my face, because she added gently, "Are you all right?" I nodded slowly. Just remembering. I walked away before she could ask more. At the edge of the street, I sat on the curb and stared at my reflection in a car window. It was me, but not. The gray in my hair was gone. The lines around my eyes had softened. My badge pocket was empty, but faintly outlined, as if something heavy had once rested there. I took out the phone again. The screen glitched, flickered to black, then displayed a message, Integrai, co-MPO, ICID, repart, amen EDALY. I threw it onto the pavement. It didn't break, just hummed. That night, I checked into a motel off Route 1. I didn't recognize the name, the Monarch Inn, but the clerk didn't ask for ID. When I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, the reflection lagged again, a heartbeat late. I leaned close. The pupils dilated, then contracted out of sync. I tried to write everything down in the motel's notepad. Dates, locations, names. But the pen bled across the page, letters warping until the words looked printed in mirror image. When I turned the paper over, the back spelled something faintly legible. Return pending. Around 2 a.m., the power flickered. The hum filled the room again, crawling under the walls. I heard the sound of a truck engine outside, steady and low. When I looked through the blinds, a white department vehicle was idling by the curb. No driver. The lights were off, but the exhaust puffed in perfect rhythm with my breathing. I tried calling Lydia again. This time, someone answered. "Hello," I said. Silence. Then a faint echo of my own voicey. "Hello. Oh, is this?" The voice repeated. "Who is this?" Then both lines spoke together, overlapping, in sync. Integrity maintained. The call disconnected. At sunrise, I packed my things and drove north toward D.C., hoping maybe someone at headquarters could explain what was happening. But the exits looked different. The signs read numbers that didn't exist. Route 195A, Route 303 East. The radio picked up nothing but static, except when I passed under bridges. Then, faint voices. My name. The sound of breathing. Near Arlington, I stopped at a diner. The waitress brought coffee without me ordering. "Haven't seen you in a while, Mr. Rourke," she said. I froze. "You know me?" She smiled like it was a joke. "Of course. You come every Thursday. What day is it?" I looked around. The other customers sat motionless, forks midair, coffee steam frozen. Only the waitress moved. "You're out of sync," she said softly. "You weren't supposed to leave." The hum grew louder, vibrating through the table. My cup rattled. "What are you talking about?" She leaned close. Her eyes flickered with static. "You're part of the system now, Daniel. The outside isn't outside anymore." When I blinked, she was gone. The diner was empty. The coffee still hot. I stumbled outside, into air that shimmered like heat haze. The cars on the road were moving backward. A sign flickered between our Eingetone and Integritigler Zuni 4. The phone in my pocket buzzed once more. New message. Shupi Arvis Ro RKE. Yunen AU Shonwadzi Stet DTT. Ranchitionin and TATE. I threw it into traffic. It landed under a passing truck and crushed flat, but the hum didn't stop. If anything, it grew stronger, coming from inside my chest. By evening, I reached the Potomac. The river looked wrong, too smooth, no current. The reflections didn't match the skyline. When I leaned over the water, I saw myself again, like before. Only the reflection smiled first. "Welcome back," it said without moving its lips. I stumbled backward, breathing hard. Across the river, lights flickered in the direction of the facility. For a second, I thought I saw shapes moving. Huge, slow, synchronized pulses under the earth. The hum reached a crescendo, filling the world. Then silence. When I looked up, I was standing not by the river, but in front of the facility gate again. Same fog, same guard booth. The sign read, Department of Sanitation Division 5. The booth light flickered on. Rhonda sat inside, smiling faintly. "Morning, Daniel," she said. "Rough night?" I stared. You weren't here." "Always am," she said. "You're due at sub-level 3. Supervisor review." The words made my knees weak. "No," I said. "No more." But the gate light turned green anyway, and the hum behind it called my name. Rhonda's smile didn't fade. "You know the rules?" she said. "Observation ensures containment." I looked down at my chest. The black badge was there again, gleaming faintly. The letters etched in silver, and beneath my name, a new word had appeared. Ronstede. The gate closed behind me with that soft pneumatic hiss I'd come to dread. The fog swallowed the sound before it reached the road. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the building. It looked different again. Half the windows boarded over, others glowing with steady white light. The hum beneath the ground pulsed in time with the security lights. Rhonda was still in the booth, still smiling, though her eyes didn't blink. "Welcome back, Daniel," she said. "You're early. It's midnight." She glanced at a wall clock. 6 a.m. I looked down at my watch. 1:03 a.m. The second hand trembled, then jumped backward a beat. "Sub-level 3, she repeated. "They're waiting." I walked toward the main doors. The badge on my chest vibrated softly, like it had a heartbeat of its own. Every time the hum deepened, the badge grew warm. Inside, the halls were empty again. Only my footsteps, and sometimes the faint echo of other footsteps that didn't quite match mine. Half a second late, always one pace behind. The elevator was already waiting, doors open, as though I'd been expected. When I stepped inside, the lights flickered and the control panel rearranged itself. Buttons sliding silently across the surface until only two remained, Suarfacey and Core. I didn't press anything. The doors closed anyway, and the elevator began to move. I couldn't tell if it was going up or down. After a few seconds, the walls around me flickered like old film. One moment, brushed steel, humming cables. The next concrete, the faint smell of coffee and air conditioning. Then steel again. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw my own reflection in the polished wall. Then I realized it wasn't a reflection. It was another me, moving slightly out of sync. When I turned my head, he didn't. When I raised my hand, he reached for his badge instead. The lights blinked once more, and he was gone. When the doors opened, I was standing in the reception area. Morning light filtered through the glass doors, and Rhonda's laugh echoed from somewhere down the hall. A pot of coffee brewed on the counter. Everything looked normal. I almost believed it. Then I saw the plaque on the wall. Department of Sanitation Division 5, Supervisor Rourke. My name, engraved neatly in brass. There were footsteps behind me. I turned and froze. Another me walked through the door. Same uniform, same face, but his badge read Supervisor Rook, acting. He smiled politely. "You're early." My mouth went dry. "Who are you?" "Continuity." He said it as if that explained everything. "They said we'd meet soon. I'm not part of this." He tilted his head. "You keep saying that." I reached out to grab him, but my hand went through his sleeve like smoke. The air rippled around the contact, and I smelled iron again, the same metallic sweetness that filled the sub-levels. He didn't flinch. "Don't fight it," he said. "You'll just loop faster." The room flickered, white walls turning to gray metal, fluorescent hum rising until my teeth vibrated. The coffee pot shattered soundlessly, its glass suspended mid, air for a moment before vanishing. I was back in the elevator, alone. This time, there was a voice through the intercom, Dr. Morin's. "You're oscillating between containment states," she said calmly. "Try to remain still." "What's happening to me?" "You're merging. Surface and core integration overlap when observation is unstable. Breathe evenly. The system will correct." "I'm not a system," I said through clenched teeth. Her voice softened. "You are now." The lights dimmed. For a brief moment, I saw rows of containment pods stretching into the dark, each holding a still figure. Some looked like me. Some looked half finished, faces blurred, hands translucent. Each one exhaled in rhythm with the hum. Then the elevator stopped. The doors opened. I was standing in my own kitchen. The clock on the wall read 7:42 a.m. Lydia's mug sat on the counter, steam curling from it. I could smell toast, hear water running in the bathroom. "Lydia." My voice cracked. She stepped into the doorway, towel around her hair, eyes soft with the kind of familiarity that hurts. "You're up early," she said. "Long day ahead." I stared. Her movements were perfect, but too smooth, like someone remembering how a person should move. "What year is it?" I asked. She smiled. "Always the same year, Daniel. You know that." The floor hummed beneath my feet. The sound was faint but steady. I backed toward the door, but when I opened it, the hallway beyond wasn't my house. It was the sub-level corridor, dim and endless. Lydia's voice followed me from behind. "You shouldn't have left the core." I turned. The kitchen was gone. Only the metal door remained, sealed tight. Something inside me cracked. Not pain exactly, but a sensation of pressure releasing. The hum changed pitch, rising into something almost like a heartbeat. My vision shimmered, and I saw flashes, the core pulsing. Dr. Morin watching from behind glass, Director Hayes writing on a clipboard. Every image overlapped, each one bleeding into the next, until I couldn't tell which was real. I stumbled down the corridor. The lights flickered between surface brightness and underground dimness. One step felt like walking through a government office, the next through an endless tunnel of metal. Then voices, low-layered, all speaking the same words. Integrity requires continuity. I followed them, half running, until the hallway opened into a chamber I didn't recognize. The walls were covered in mirrors, not glass, polished metal panels that reflected in soft, fluid distortions. Each reflection showed a different version of me. One older, one younger, one with hollow eyes. Some wore black badges, some wore none. All of them spoke at once, the sound perfectly synchronized. Observation ensures containment. I clapped my hands over my ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside my skull, I whispered. "Please, stop." The reflections froze. All except one, the one closest to the center. He stepped forward, out of the mirror. His expression was calm, almost kind. "You're the anomaly," he said. "You're the reason it flickers." "I'm not." "Yes, you are. You kept thinking you were separate." That's what broke the loop. He reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder. His touch was warm, solid, too solid. "You need to let go," he said. "We're not meant to stand outside ourselves." I looked down. His hand was glowing faintly, edges blurring. My own skin began to pulse with the same light. "What happens if I don't?" His voice softened. "Then everything collapses. The system depends on us agreeing to exist." The hum grew louder. The walls shivered. One by one. The other reflections dissolved into light. The air filled with static, a rising frequency that made my vision swim. I yanked away, stumbling backward through the door. But when I turned, I wasn't in the corridor anymore. I was outside, standing by the Potomac again. Morning sun glinted off the water. Cars crossed the bridge in slow motion. My breath came fast, ragged. The badge was gone again. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe I'd escaped. Then I saw my reflection in the river. It was still smiling. Behind the reflection, faint shapes were forming, structures under the water, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. The core. It had followed me, or maybe I'd never left. The phone in my pocket vibrated once. The screen lit with a single line, "Superviso Arstas, observin, unstabili." The reflection tilted its head. "Daniel," it said softly, "we need you to look." "I'm done looking." The reflection shook its head. "If you stop, it breaks." The river's surface rippled outward. And for an instant I saw faces. Hundreds of them. Beneath the water, all looking up. Oh. All versions of me. I turned away, started walking toward the road. But with each step, the world around me shifted. The grass became metal flooring. The air filled with the sterile tang of disinfectant. Somewhere above, an intercom crackled. Containment integrity restored. Supervisor returning to station. I stopped. Looked down. My reflection in a puddle stared back, uniform spotless, badge shining black. I closed my eyes, counted to 3, opened them again. I was in the elevator. Dr. Morin's voice came through the speaker, calm and even. "There you are. The overlap stabilized. You performed well." "I'm tired," I said. "I don't know what's real anymore." "Real is the part that functions," she said. "The rest is residue." The elevator began to descend, or rise. I couldn't tell anymore. "Am I free?" I asked. "Freedom isn't the goal," she said. "Continuity is." The lights flickered once. In the mirrored wall, my reflection smiled a split second before I did. "Welcome back, Daniel," it said. And when the doors opened, there was daylight again. The light was soft when the elevator doors opened. Not the sterile fluorescence of sub-level corridors, not daylight either. Something in between, the tone of an early morning that never ends. I stepped out and found myself in a corridor that looked newly built. The walls were painted a pale, institutional green. A faint smell of polish hung in the air. Down the hallway, a sign read orientation wing. A voices drifted from beyond the corner. I followed them. The room was large, glass, walled, filled with rows of new recruits seated at metal desks. They looked young, mid-20s maybe. Nervous smiles, pressed uniforms, hands folded like schoolchildren waiting for instructions. At the front stood Dr. Morin. She looked the same as ever, clipboard in hand, calm as a photograph. And remember, she was saying, sanitation is the backbone of order. We ensure that contamination, physical, informational, or emotional, never reaches the public sphere. You will each be assigned a supervisor for field integration. Her eyes lifted toward me. For a moment, I thought I saw recognition. Then she smiled politely, the way one greets a stranger who feels familiar. "Ah," she said. "Here's one of our senior personnel now." She gestured for me to join her. I hesitated, but my body moved before I decided to. The recruits watched as I crossed the room. "This is Supervisor Rook," she said. 23 years of service. He'll share a few words about integrity. Applause, polite and small. I turned toward them, throat dry. "Good morning," I said, though I wasn't sure it was morning. "My name's Daniel Rourke. I work for the Department of Sanitation. Division 5. The words came easily, like reading from a manual etched into my tongue. "When I started here," I continued, "I thought we cleaned up waste. Accidents. Things people shouldn't see. But it's more than that. We handle what leaks through. The pieces that don't fit. We make sure the story stays whole." A few recruits nodded, pens scratching notes. "You'll hear noises at night," I said quietly. "Machinery, breathing, sometimes voices. Don't follow them. They're just echoes of unfinished work." Morin smiled faintly. He's joking, of course. I looked at her. She didn't blink. After the briefing, the recruits filed out, their new badges gleaming. Morin lingered by the podium. "You did well," she said. "I don't remember agreeing to this." "You don't have to." She handed me a folder. Inside was a list of names. Each had a code beside it: R series, S series, D series. At the bottom mine, "Supervisor rotation," she said. Continuity never stops. I wanted to ask what happened to the others. The versions of me still flickering somewhere between surface and core. But the question dissolved before it reached my mouth. The hum had changed again. Softer now, almost pleasant. I walked the halls that evening, the way I used to when the facility slept. Only now there was no sleep, just cycles. Daylight that dimmed but never disappeared. At intake 2, a gurney waited. White sheet. Clipboard. I signed the form automatically. Material received. Archive. No one told me to. My hand just moved. Down in assimilation, the pods glowed faintly. Some were empty. Some held outlines. The console flickered when I passed, recognizing me. Supervisor Rourke. Integrity stable. I paused before one of the pods. The figure inside looked peaceful. For a second, I thought it was Harper, but when I leaned closer, I realized it was me, older, or maybe just more complete. His eyes opened as mine did. "The glass fog with our shared breath. Containment holds," he mouthed. I nodded. Back upstairs, I found an office waiting for me. My name on the door, brass letters already polished. Inside, a desk, a terminal, a single lamp. The window looked out over what might have been the surface. Trees, sky, a suggestion of distance. When I pressed my palm to the glass, it was warm. The terminal blinked awake. A message waited. Daily log. Supervisor Rourke Integrity Index, 99.8%. Notes none required. I added a line anyway, all systems functioning. Personnel compliant. Before sending it, I hesitated, then typed one more sentence. I think I remember the sun. The cursor blinked. Then the words vanished, replaced with acknowledged. I sat there for a long time. The hum vibrated through the desk, gentle, steady. For the first time, it didn't bother me. It sounded almost like breathing. Mine and something larger, synchronized. At some point, Morin's voice came through the intercom. "We'll begin a new intake tomorrow. Would you like to observe?" I said. "Good continuity appreciates consistency." The line clicked off. I turned off the lamp and sat in the half-light, watching the not quite sky shift through muted colors. A movement caught my eye, a reflection in the window. Another me, standing behind, just out of reach. He wasn't smiling this time, just watching, patient. I didn't turn. There was comfort in the symmetry. The hum deepened once more, a low note that filled the bones of the building. Somewhere below, machinery stirred. I pictured the core breathing, expands of metal and light expanding, contracting, feeding. I whispered to the reflection, "Observation ensures containment." He mouthed the words with me. At dawn, if dawn existed here, I walked the upper corridor. Recruits were arriving again, faces new, eyes bright. They nodded respectfully as I passed. One of them dropped a folder. I stooped to pick it up and saw the label R40E. My code, one iteration higher. The recruit thanked me, unaware of what the letter meant. Outside, the air was still clear. The fog had lifted, revealing neat lawns and parked trucks. Everything orderly, everything clean. A loudspeaker crackled. "Attention all personnel. Integrity update complete. Please resume standard operations." I looked up. The sky held steady, colorless. Somewhere far below, the core pulsed once, sending a tremor through the ground. A heartbeat beneath my own. I straightened my uniform, checked the time, U60 Hausert exactly, and walked toward the orientation wing. There was work to do.